Hi, I'm Dr. Adrienne Jenkins, and I'm a lecturer in composition at Wayne State University. This video is for students in English 1020 about to do the iSearch project. In the video, I'll talk about why we do the iSearch, how it's different from other research projects that you may have done before, what the iSearch paper looks like, and how you should begin working through the project. During the video, I'll refer to samples of writing and reflective questions that you might find useful to return to as you work throughout the iSearch. The iSearch is an inquiry-based research project that will help you begin to explore questions you're interested in and learn how to do college-level research. In the iSearch project, you'll work on understanding the complex iSearch genre, which uses moves like narration, description, summary, analysis, and evaluation. Working through a writing process that includes planning, drafting, revising, giving and receiving feedback, and editing. Working through a research process that includes learning about the resources the undergraduate library has to offer, including online databases, print resources, and research support from librarians. Reading and analyzing sources as you work to find answers to your questions and credible and persuasive information to share with your audience. Using MLA format and citation to show readers where your information comes from, and reflecting on which research and writing strategies best serve your rhetorical purposes. There are a few key ways that the iSearch is different from the traditional research paper that many students first learn to write in high school. Whereas traditional research papers present thesis statements and then include research to support the thesis, iSearch papers begin with questions, and then students write about the research process and the sources that help answer those questions, sometimes ending in a tentative thesis, other times resulting in even more questions to explore. In traditional school research papers, we've learned to keep ourselves and personal pronouns out of the writing. In iSearch papers, however, the writer's personal experiences, prior knowledge, and experience working through the research are all a part of the final written product. Essentially, the iSearch presents the experience, analysis, and reflection that's typically behind the scenes in presented research. It allows for tentative conclusions, flexible research paths, inductive arguments, and discussion of the struggles that often come with research. The iSearch contains some distinct organizational and rhetorical features, and I want to take a few minutes now to talk through those by looking at a sample paper. I'll talk through the sections of the iSearch while looking at Brian's sample iSearch paper available in your resource materials. There are 4 sections in an iSearch. In the first 2 sections, you'll explore your prior knowledge on the topic, share your research question or questions, and explain your motivation for asking the question. You can choose to do these 3 moves in whatever order seems best. This would be a good spot to pause the video, take a look at Brian's introduction, and then we'll come back and talk about it. When we look at Brian's paper, this is Detroit, not Paris, we can see that his introduction is the first 2 paragraphs of his essay. Depending on how much you know about your topic ahead of time, you might have a lot of prior knowledge to explain and share, depending on what's relevant to your research question, or you might have just a little bit, and the bigger part of your introduction could be just explaining your question and your motivation. Brian's paper is pretty balanced. He talks in the first paragraph about his move to Michigan at 14 and what he noticed about it then. And then he moves into some discussion of the knowledge he's gained about Detroit and the economy. Finally, he moves into his questions and explains what his motivation is. His questions are kind of structured right in here, and he does a little bit of reflection building up to those questions. So he asks, after sharing all this historical information, what happened to Detroit? How did Detroit shift from being labeled the Paris of the Midwest to what it is considered today? And those are really reflective questions that build up to his research question, which is here: what specific events formulated these consequences? Finally, in his introduction, he talks about why he's asking these different questions, what's motivating him to learn more about this. The search is the longest part of the project. Here in the body of the text, you'll make moves like narrating your research process, reporting what you find in sources, analyzing that information, evaluating its usefulness for answering your research question, and reflecting on what sources provide you the best, most persuasive support for your research. That's really what we're looking for in the iSearch project, is practicing doing research and finding the best sources, because eventually you're going to move on to write a research argument that will require this really good ability to research. Let's pause and take a look at the fourth paragraph of Brian's essay just to see how he moves into the search. Read that paragraph and then we'll come back and talk about it. One of the things that you'll want to be very explicit about in your iSearch paper is how you're finding your sources, what library tools you use, how you navigate them, search terms that you use. All of that information shared with your audience can help them get a really good understanding of your research process. Brian doesn't do that so thoroughly here. He talks about how he spent time clicking through articles and scholarly databases, but he doesn't explain how he was searching, how he's actually. So that's one thing that you'll want to make sure that you do. Well, up here in the first sentence, he says he will begin the narration of his research process with 2 articles he found stumbling online. And really, we don't do a lot of stumbling online. We kind of have learned how to look for certain things, how to use search terms, and those are skills you're going to keep practicing in the iSearch project. So explain that search process to your audience. One of the things that Brian is doing really well is introducing his sources. He gives us titles and authors, tells us a little bit about who the authors are, and before he dives into explaining a lot of the content that he finds in subsequent paragraphs, he talks about why these articles are largely relevant. So for example, down here, he says, this article gave me the statistical aspect I wanted to incorporate into my paper. And so that's helpful information. We know why he is using them. In the final section of the iSearch, you'll explain what you've learned. And this could be about many things, including summarizing the answers and information you found, reflecting on which research strategies and tools were most useful for researching your topic, identifying what you discovered about reading or writing about sources, or anything else that you learned through the process. Pause the video and take a moment to look at Brian's last paragraph that comes on his page 11 and look at the kinds of things that he's chosen to explore along with summarizing his answers. To get started on your iSearch, you first need to settle on a strong research question, keeping in mind that for an iSearch, you should pose a question that you don't already have the answer to. In your assignment sheet, you'll see some reflective questions that you can use to think about whether the research question you've drafted is going to work well for your project. Once you've found a good question, one that fits the assignment requirements and really interests you, then you're ready to get started on research, discovering which library and other resources will best help you find your answers. I suggest taking a look at the English 1020 Research Guide on our Wayne State Undergraduate Library website. Here you're going to be able to find access to academic journal databases, periodical databases, and a lot of other sources that will be useful to you. It will be important that you write about your research as you conduct it so that you can account for your research experience when you describe the search in your project and reflect on your struggles and successes. All of this will be important practice for writing more formal researched arguments in future assignments in this class and others. Get excited to find a good research question and dig into the research process. I hope you have a great search.